must feel the force around you.
Dear students, today we'll learn the basic interaction part of the chapter force. So these are the objectives. After going through this lecture, student can recognize the forces that affect the motion of matter. Students can also compare the balanced and unbalanced forces. Students can determine the net forces on an object. So what are the forces? So coming to the definition, a force is a push or pull that cause an object to move, stop, or change in direction. So in the first figure, we can see the person is applying a pushing force. In the second figure, we can see the person is applying a pulling force, and without any force, we know that any object can't move. So in physics, a force is anything that makes an object accelerate. So without any force, we won't find any acceleration, or if to accelerate a body, we have to apply some sort of forces. If an object is stationary, it won't start moving without a force. So for a stationary body, to make it move, we have to apply some sort of force in that. So what are the magnitude and what is the direction of force? So we know the force is a vector quantity as it has both magnitude and direction. So in the figure, you can see a 5 Newton force is applied in north and upward direction. So what will be the magnitude of the force? So here my magnitude of the force is nothing but the 5 Newton is applying. And what is the direction? Direction is, we can see from the figure, it is applying the north direction. North is nothing but the upward direction. So it has both the quantity, magnitude and direction. So we can call it as vector quantity. So force measurement and its units. The SI unit of the force is Newton. And a Newton is a force that causes a kg mass to accelerate at a rate of 1 meter per second square. This is nothing but the gravity. We know W equal to mg. So W is nothing but the 1 Newton. W is the force is acting, and m is nothing but 1 kg of mass into g. G is nothing but 1 meter per second in 9.81 meter per second square. So likewise, we have to consider and we have to find out the forces. So what is the device you can use to find out the force? We can use a spring scale to find out the forces in the body. So combining forces. Then we have to know what is the net force and how it can be defined. The overall forces acting on an object after all forces are combined, it can be termed as net forces. If forces in the same direction, then we have to add it. So in the figure, we can see a 10 Newton is force is applied in the rightward direction, and another 10 Newton force is applied in the rightward direction. So in that case, we have to add it as both of the forces is applied in the same direction. So our net forces will be 10 plus 10 equal to 20 Newton. And in what direction it will be acting? As both the forces are acting in the rightward direction. So the resultant force, net force also will be acting in the rightward direction. If the force is in opposite direction, in that case, you can't add it. You have to subtract them. So in that figure, we can see 10 Newton force is applied in the rightward direction and a 7 Newton force is applied in the leftward direction. So here we have to subtract it, and the net force will be 10 minus 7 Newton equal to 3 Newton. And in what direction it will be? Always you have to remember the direction should be in the larger force direction. So here 10 Newton is the larger than 7 Newton and it is acting in rightward direction. So the resultant net force will be in the larger force 10 Newton's direction. So it is in rightward direction. In the second figure also you can see a girl is applying 25 Newton force in the rightward direction, and the boy also is applying 20 Newton in the rightward direction. So what will be my net force? As it is in the same direction, so we have to add it. 25 Newton plus 20 Newton will be equal to 45 Newton. And at what direction? As both are in the same direction of right direction, so we have to choose a right direction. So if the force will be acting in the right direction. But in this figure, One dog is applying 10 Newton in left direction and the second dog is applying 12 Newton in the rightward direction. So here the result to get the net force we have to subtract as it is not in the same direction. So 12 Newton minus 10 Newton will give me the magnitude of the force is nothing but 2 Newton. And in what direction? In the bigger force direction. Bigger force is acting in the rightward direction. So my net force will be in the rightward direction. So how to combine two forces when it is acting in the right angle to each other? So if A and B denotes two forces and which acting in the right angle, so in that case we can find the resultant net force by applying the Pythagoras theorem, which is nothing but a square plus b square equal to c square. C is my hypotenuse and A and B two forces acting in the right angle direction. So for an example, we can see here 3 Newton force is applied in the southward direction and 4 Newton is applied in the west direction. So we can see both of the forces are acting in the right angle direction, means and it is acting with an angle of right angle. So we can apply the Pythagoras theorem here, a square plus b square equal to c square to get my resultant force. C is my resultant force. So c square equal to 4 square plus 3 square. Simultaneously, you have to find out C value. C value is 5 Newton and it will be in what direction? In the southwest direction. You can see the hypotenuse will give me the, as my hypotenuse gives me the resultant force, so it will be in the southwest direction. So coming to the next slide, we'll get the knowledge of balanced and unbalanced forces. Forces occurs in pairs and they can be either balanced or unbalanced. If it is balanced, then both of the forces will be equal, and if it is unbalanced forces, then both of the forces will be unequal in quantity. So balanced forces. Actually there won't be any change in motion because as the both of the forces are same, so net forces will be zero. Earlier we already said that if there is a force, net forces, if there is some value of forces, then it will cause any movement in the body. So as the net forces is zero, so there will be no movement in a body. We can see in the figure both of the person is applying equal forces, so the net forces will be zero. Simultaneously in second figure also both the person is showing the same forces, giving the same forces, so it will be the net forces will be zero. So for an example here also we are showing that for rightward direction if we apply 5 Newton and in leftward direction if we apply 5 Newton, my resultant force will be 0 because 5 minus 5 equal to 0, and there is no the net force will be here 0. Another example, for an example, you can say for gravitational pull pulls us down, simultaneously the ground pushes us back. So this is also, there also net forces is 0. If the balance forces actually neutralizes the forces, so there won't be any acceleration. If there is no force, there won't be any acceleration. Here also you can see it is a balanced example of balanced forces. Rightward also you are applying 5 Newton and leftward also 5 Newton. So there is ultimately net acceleration, no acceleration will be there as there is no force. For unbalanced forces, if two forces are not equal, then we can call it unbalanced forces. Here you can see 3 Newton forces applied in the rightward direction and 6 Newton forces applied in the leftward direction. So the net force will be, we have to subtract it, 6 Newton minus 3 Newton. And in what direction it will be? In the larger force direction, which is 6 Newton in the left direction. So the net force will be left direction. Another example of unbalanced force, we can see the first person is applying less forces than the second person. So it will be in so net forces will be in the direction of the right direction. 4 Newton left it is applying and 10 Newton right. So the net forces will be how much? 10 minus 4, 6 Newton, and in the direction of rightward direction. So another unbalanced forces we can see both of the forces, if we apply in the same direction, which is not equal, we can see the first person is applying what load, the boy what is will be applying the load will be lesser than the uh, elder woman, what amount of load she can apply. So these are also an example of unbalanced forces. In that case, how will you calculate? So in that case, as both of the forces are applied in the same direction, so my resultant force also will be in the same direction, and in that case we have to add it up. So 5 Newton right and 10 Newton right. So it will be 10 plus 5, 15 Newton, and which direction? Same direction, right direction. So this is all about the forces and net forces and resultant forces, and how it acts and how it causes any changes in the body we learned from this subject. Thank you.